All right. Well, it's been a while since I've recorded a video. Thought I should do one here pretty quick. I haven't really touched this for a while. It's been, gosh, maybe almost 3 months. It was December 15th was around the time that I left off. Number one is I can't work with my paints in the garage. And I was going to start putting some light blocker around the inside. And I didn't want to do that in the cold. But also, I think just some of the excitement of the project began to wear off, and the tedium, of course, was settling in, the realization of the work involved. Not that I'm discouraged from the project, but just the reality of the work that's involved is certainly began to sink in. But, real life took over as well. I had, there goes my camera. My job takes priority, and I was deep at work in a couple of projects at work. So anyway, last couple of weekends I've been back to this again, and I thought I would just do a quick update video. Mostly what I've done here is just finish off most of these little baffles inside the trench that's all along the inside of the top part of the saucer section, and I've been cutting these pieces out and getting them glued in there. I've taped on all of the, I don't know what to call these, the vertical pieces of the saucer section, because I found just leaving them off the tree, but just leaving them lying around my desk, they were beginning to warp a little bit. They wanted to unbend themselves wherever this gap existed. So I just taped them on to kind of force them to conform to the shape that they're going to live in for the rest of their lives. I began sanding down just to see how well I could do. I sanded down the front phaser banks, the little square portions, and it's not easy to do. The biggest concern is, of course, sanding away the groove that's in here, the detail. And I've managed to avoid doing that so far. But I still have 2 more to go on the top part, and I believe the bottom part of the saucer section has it as well, and also the bottom part of the main hull also has phaser banks. But anyway, I am down to my last, let me just pull this piece off. I'm cutting my last section, the little baffles, the compartment bulkheads. And I've got 4 of the 5 cut. So I thought, just for anybody who's curious, I would kind of go through that process on camera and just show you what I've been doing to cut these out. So I began to do one already, but I'll just snip it off. When I first started going around, I was trying to cut. So I cut the first 5, 6, maybe 7 of them, like the first section and a half, a section being one of these areas, one of these light areas. I think I got through the first 1.5, and then I decided, you know what, this might be easier if I just went assembly line and cut all the rest of them at once, roughed them out, and then grabbed out of the pile as I needed and just formed them to fit at that point. But what happened is the template that I was working off of, either it got corrupted or it just didn't fit as I encountered a certain part of the outside circumference, and all the pieces that I had cut were basically useless. So I just started doing them one by one, and I found, in fact, that it's easier to do it that way. So the first thing I do is I just square off the edge of my polystyrene. Do I remember what size of styrene this is? I'll have to look on the packages. It's a 6.3 by something. So I find I just need to take off, from cutting the end off with the scissors. Of course, I get the burrs on the sides of the polystyrene, and the edge isn't always exactly square, because the top part of the last piece that I cut out of it isn't square. It doesn't fit into that channel square. So just take it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just roughly square. So what size is this? 6.3, but it's not that thick, so it's not the 0.25. It's not the 6.3 by 1 mil. It is the, 6.3 by 3/4 of a mil, 0.75 millimeter. I find that works well. It's flexible enough. Pardon me. Once I get a little bit of black paint on it, it's completely opaque. Pardon me. Okay. So you can see there's 3 pieces sitting here. These are 3 of the 5 that I've cut. Plus I've got my template piece, the mold that I've been working with. That's what it looks like right there. I put that little black mark on it just so I know it's the template. Okay. So what I do is I put this template piece on the top of the new styrene, and I, just using my fingernails, I kind of guide it so that it's square. The 2 pieces are square together on that far edge. Kind of like so. And then I take the pencil and I just mark off the inside of that cutout. Keep the pencil sharp and the lines will be nice and tight. Then I take these small scissors. These little small scissors are great. They can usually get right in there and snip right to the corner and minimize the amount of cleanup I have to do on the inside of that cut. I cut right on the pencil line, and I find when I do that, it's nice and snug inside that channel. To the point where, I mean, there are a few pieces that I probably wouldn't have needed to glue at all. By the time I put some, just snug them in there and then put some enamel paint over the whole thing and seal them up, and they'll stay right in there probably, but I glue them anyway. I'll just clean up the burr. Some of that pinched plastic inside the cut. Just a very rough cleanup. It doesn't have to be great. Again, another burr along the top edge. Okay. And then I can stuff it into this channel. And usually it's a bit too big. That's fine. So it's just starting to go in there. I find that the channel begins to narrow as it goes in. It starts a little bit wider and then it narrows, and it narrows along the edge, along the inside of that cut, the inside of the square here. It narrows a bit, and it's just a couple swipes with the sandpaper usually does it. In fact, it's just the little pinching effect on the plastic. The scissors causes a bit of a pinch as it's cutting. And sometimes it's the leading edge of that pinch needs to be cleaned off, and that'll I'll let it sit in there nicely. Yeah, I see so it's sitting in there fully almost. Now I can squeeze that down, and that piece is in there. Now you can see the little black marks that I've made along the edge of the saucer section. That is in fact where I need to put each of these. But in the middle, it's tricky because, let me put this on here. In the middle of them, there's no top edge to seal off those compartments. So that's a good place to test my fit of the far edge and how that vertical piece of this, that vertical piece is going to fit up against this edge here. So it's nice for testing that out. Not so much for testing the height. So I find I have to just kind of find one of these outside bulkheads and just off-center it a little bit. And that way when I put the vertical piece on, they're kind of sitting right next to each other, and I can just sort of eyeball it until it'll tuck up under there nicely. And then from there, it's just a matter of feeling the edge and making sure I don't have a gap. but I've learned how to do them pretty quickly. I'm turning these pieces out pretty quickly this past last weekend, and then the weekend before I was working on these. And I think each weekend I did, so it took me basically a day to go through each of these sections. So I knocked 2 of them off in a weekend and then 2 off the weekend before. And the first 2 are the ones that I left off when I put this project aside back in December. Where was I? Oh yeah. So now I can go back to, now that I know what fits in the channel, I can go back to my template piece and kind of mark off the top. So I just snug that in there again. Now that I've got that inside cut, it's very easy to line them back up. And then I just mark the outside. Oh, started to lose it there. That's good. Now I can free this piece from the styrene strip. I've spent a lot of time just sort of staring at the parts too, and kind of looking ahead to see what I have to do next, because this work with the compartments is nowhere near done. Once I get the bottom pieces finished, I still have I have to put the vertical pieces in there, the windows, and then try to cut out compartments for the lower windows, which is, when it's upside down, it looks like the upper ones. It's the 2 of them along the bottom. Each need their own compartment as well, which means I'll either need to do that, probably need to do it while it's off the ship, and then when I assemble them, they'll be ready to go. I haven't decided yet. What I've been looking at, though, is the officer's lounge in here. That's really tricky because it's not a fit. The piece that goes in there does not fit in there. It's nowhere near light blocking. So I'm gonna have to do a lot of work just to seal all that up. The interesting part is that the 2 oval windows here and here, they seem to look into the rear hallway on the officer's lounge. So the lights that are in around there that would shine out those 2 oval holes would also light up the back area in the officer's lounge. So that's interesting to play with. So if I can seal off right up from around this edge, these 2 lights can, these 2 windows can be lit from the same light. I've seen some people also backlighting these to give it like a monitor effect, and that's pretty cool. I think I'll do that as well. It does look good. So once the piece is rough cut off of the polystyrene, I can put it in there. This is where the tedious part begins. And this takes, depending on how well I cut them, it can take up to, like 20 minutes, a half hour in each one. Certainly when I was first trying to do them, I was over-engineering them, and I was spending like 2 hours on each one because I wanted perfect fits. And then I realized, I don't need perfect fits. It just needs to get close. And then the rest will be sealed off with either the enamel paint or I'm thinking a little bit of black silicone on areas that I won't be able to paint. So that's already a pretty close fit. Okay. So this edge here that I'm cleaning up, it's the edge that goes against the vertical piece with the windows. And it is angled because of the shape of the saucer and the curve. But there is also a bit of a curve to this, the way it needs to fit in here. And again, I was over-engineering these at first, and I've since realized, just get them close. So what used to take 2 hours is now taking closer to probably about 10 to 15 minutes on the average. I was cranking them out there pretty good for a while. I've had a couple of them come off the tree basically perfect. They just fit in there nicely. Nice and snug. Pretty close around all the edges. That's always a nice feeling. Still have a gap? A little bit, yeah. I've also spent a lot of time, now that these pieces are on there, just having a really good inspection of how well these pieces are going to mate with each other to keep the all the detail in line. And it's not a perfect fit on all occasions. Most of them are pretty close, but there's a few that are really off. Before I glue those pieces on permanently, which is still a ways away, I will certainly give each last one of those sections, window sections, a really good final test. Make sure they fit in there nicely. I found on a couple of occasions when these vertical pieces didn't quite fit onto the saucer section correctly, it was because these little guides were bumping up against their counterpart on the actual saucer section. And I had to take a round file and get in there and just take a little bit off that inside edge so that it could sit in a little bit further. That's what was, in some cases, causing there to be overhang or underhang between this and the edge of the saucer section. So I had to really pay attention to that. I think there were 2 or maybe 3 altogether occasions where that was the case. I'm not sure if you guys are even interested in this kind of minute detail, but I thought I could at least do one of these on camera. Pretty good there. Sitting on there nicely. Is it rocking at all? It is a little bit. Oh, just a little though. Usually when I screw up, it's on this top edge where I create a gap that's a little too large. I have to throw away the piece. I don't know why it's always the top edge. It's the one that's hardest to see, I think. Okay. I glance over and there's my cup of coffee just sitting there waiting for me. And it's still really tight. So right now I've got it, at this point, I've discovered the best way to do it. This is where I leave it just off the marker a little bit. And I try to look down the channel and see how well that's going to fit. So there's my edge right here. And you can probably just see right on that line, there's my piece. And that lets me see how close I am. And it's still really tight. I don't know how to do it. You know, just for fun, I was watching videos on YouTube of these guys who get into model railroading. And some of these guys, gosh, the setups they have in their basements it's absolutely amazing. So this one video, I don't remember who it was. This one fella had been working on it since the 50s or the 60s or something. And I mean, his whole basement was this massive setup. And he went from like a train setting way out in the distant country, like very rural, and then coming into closer to town and getting more and more rural as he goes, and suddenly you're in a small town sort of atmosphere, and then next thing you know, you're in a big city with actual buildings and everything back behind there. And gosh, it was just beautiful. The amount of work that he put into it was unbelievable, but it sure looked good. And he had an interesting class. I don't know anything about model railroading at all. Sure looked fascinating though. Oh, I think Gotta be careful there. I'm about to screw this piece up. Getting distracted. Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool. The guy who was filming it spent a lot of time looking at all the architecture and the scenery the guy had done, and it was astonishing. It really was. But I kept wanting to see more of the trains. He didn't really. I mean, the trains were going around the whole time, and he didn't really spend any time focusing on the trains. Because this guy had put equal amount of detail into collecting the trains that he liked, and they all had a bit of history, and they had their own in little stories as well. I hope this doesn't mean I'm going to go get into model railroading. I can't afford that. I don't have the space either. I can see why a guy would get into it, though. I mean, actually, it is fascinating. And part of the strategy and how they set up their system is so that they could stand somewhere where they can control it all, and they could observe, see everything that's happening. Their little command post. And that's part of the design. That would be pretty fun, standing there and just operating this whole little world that you built. Yeah. But I mean, to a lesser degree, that's kind of what I hope to achieve with this model here too, is some ability to just animate it a little bit and play pretend like all little boys do. Gosh, this piece is taking longer than I expected. It's probably because I'm yapping. Okay. That ought to do it. That's good. So I've got just a little bit of a gap in there. It won't show up on camera, but I've got a little bit of a gap in there. Close enough. The rest will be sealed off with a little bead of silicone. But once I've got these, once I've got these all light blocked, let's talk about my plan here. Once I have these all light blocked, these compartments, that's where I need to go and take my lights, and I will be ready to actually glue the LEDs to the insides here and leave the wires hanging out. In order to have those wires hanging out, I do need to take off some of the plastic because the wires do not come out with the size of the gap that I'm given in here. The wires don't fit. And you can see I did a test here, and in this case I cut off a little notch on the actual vertical, the window part. That's one option. The other option is to cut it out of the bulkhead here. I think I prefer to cut it out of here where possible, and then just leave the wires sticking up. Because I think if I cut this down further, I'm going to need to bend those wires too soon, and that might put stress on the connection between the wiring and the LED. But I mean, that trench is pretty deep inside there, so I think that should be fine. I don't think it'd be a problem. This is also thicker plastic, just takes longer to work through, so that's why I cut the notch in this one. I have cut out one of my little window lenses, and it fits into the top windows nicely, but these bottom ones I think are going to be a bit of an issue. So once I get the lights placed in there, I'm going to have to go section by section and find a way to temporarily light block them and just test to make sure that I'm happy with. Like I don't mind using silicone to do the test, make sure it works, do any little adjustments that I need to do to ensure these compartments are light blocked prior to gluing anything down. Then taking the piece off, considering it done and ready, taking the piece off and just taking the silicone off of the plastic after it's dried and then redoing it when I'm actually ready to glue them on. The silicone should just peel off nicely. I don't see that being too big of an issue. Yeah, after that, I'm going to have to start. So, I've been looking into this part as well, how I'm going to create the light and seal it off for this and the back lens. I've been doing some test fitting, and I know there is a third-party piece available that replaces the clear that goes in here. How does this go? It goes something like this. And there's a piece that comes in, it's a resin aftermarket piece. I don't know what the difference is. It's probably a little more accurate to the studio models, what's going on. Whether I'm going to buy it or not, I haven't decided yet, but I'll have to make that decision quickly because I'm getting up to having to deal with these areas at some point. Okay, this should work. I've been fussing with my camera here, trying to get it in close so I can shoot a good look at what I've been up to here. This is like a bit of addendum footage to add to the what I had already recorded. That was about 2 weeks ago now. And I thought since I haven't processed it yet, I might as well add what I've been doing and end up with an extra long video. That's really hard to watch. But I needed to get my camera in real close, and so now the tripod is right in my knees, so I'm probably going to bang it. Don't be surprised if I do. So yeah, as you can see, I have, let me move the camera here. I've gone around and light blocked all the compartments that we've added. I've also light blocked a couple of the thrusters areas, so I can do some tests with those as well. I've got these ones cut out. The other two I have not yet. This one here and one here. So I didn't bother light blocking them yet. Getting ready for something here. I've got that out and I've had a look at it. I need to get painting that here pretty quick. But what I've been primarily focused on is trying to determine whether or not, see, the question is still up in the air as to whether these light compartments are going to be viable. And I've had to prepare myself to realize they might not. But I think I'm certainly more convinced now that this is something that is possible. I'm still not certain how to mount the lights. I had some idea on how I wanted to do that, and I'm second guessing that now because I don't think it is the ideal way to do it. And I'll demonstrate what that is. But I have come to the conclusion that the compartments themselves at least are viable. Even using this compartment here, where's my pointer? My trusty pencil. This compartment here, I did mount a light in there. No, was it that one? No, sorry, it was this one here. I mounted a light in there. The wires are very thick. I didn't like that. So that's part of the problem here. But then I put the vertical piece over that, and even with this huge gap in here, the light was still very well sealed. Like obviously it was still coming through, but nowhere near as much as I expected. I think that once I take this down and seal all these up, that yes, these will be light proof. So that's good. I'm really happy about that. The question is where to mount the light. So what I did, I do have a light here right now. Let's just pull this example. So I prepared 8 of these, and I've already broken the connection off of one of them because I have to bend this LED. The original, just to show you what I had originally thought, which was that this light can go right down inside this channel with the wires sticking up like that. So then the LED is tucked right down inside there. So it's inside, there's this little lip holding it. And if I could use some heat glue or a glue gun to glue that down and somehow bend the wires over, because this part needs to mount. So I cut a notch out of the top. In here, it's hard to see everything because everything's black. I did cut a little bit of a notch out. And that was for the wires to sit in. And then I just taped this down. That would have been, I never did glue it in, and I'm thinking I should have. I'm not sure how hard it is to pick that glue off once it's set, but anyway, so the idea was that the wires would just sit out like this. So I'm going to tape this up and light it up, might as well, since I'm here. All I'm doing is putting a little tape on the vertical section, the vertical piece, in order to stick it onto the saucer section. Okay. And my lights, my power. Took a while to remember which one I used for positive and which one I used for negative. Okay, don't get fancy. Do them one at a time. Okay. Let's light that up. And the tape is covering the window. So I'll turn the light off here and we'll see what that looks like. First I want to get that tape off of there. I did put the window piece, the clear, in as well. Or did I? I'm using the wrong vertical section. I did put the clear in. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to do here, I came across the idea of maybe affixing the LEDs directly to the back face of the clear portions. The complication is that when I'm lighting this up, I'm including 2 windows in some cases and 1 window in other cases. So using a single LED solution isn't ideal because depending on how I decide to place them, for the single windows, I can't put the LED right in front of where the hole is, because then the light is very, very bright. And then I'm left with the choice of which one of the sections with 2 windows, which one of the windows I want to put the light behind. Well, I don't. I want to put it in the middle, and then I get a difference in the amount of light and how the light is shining through the windows. So the idea, I would be forced to use 2 LEDs, 1 behind each window here, and I don't want to do that because it just complicates the circuitry unnecessarily. And besides, 1 LED is easily bright enough, so I don't need to go that route. So if I can't put the LED directly in front of the light, how do I want to mount it? Putting it directly underneath it is only a partial solution, because it only works for these rows here where I have the depth of the channel. But for these 2 windows, I don't have that option. I don't have the space in between these 2 windows to get a light to sit underneath this. So one way or another, the light is either going to be off to the side of these windows or in front of them. And again, I can't do in front because then I'm forced to put 2 LEDs in this chamber here. So let's turn the light off and get that. Let's have a look, just to do a little bit of a light blocking show off, I guess. Can I reach the light from here? So there's the light coming out of the window. That's probably going to look terrible because my camera is not built to do footage in the dark. But I'm not taking any extra efforts at all to do any further light blocking, and it's not bad. There's a bit of a glow. You probably can't see that. There is a bit of a glow on the front of the vertical piece, but that's not too bad. I think it's enough that if I can get some primer onto it, a couple of coats of primer and then the base coat and whatever else I'm doing, I should be able to prevent the rest of that glow from coming through. Let me turn the light back on real quick. If I can find it. Okay. So I'm not dissatisfied so far. In fact, I'm quite pleased with that. See if you can see the glow better now. It's not focused in very well. There we go. I won't. You can see a little bit of that light coming through in the next window. That's because there's such a big gap. That's all I have coming through. It's really not bad. So yeah, I think once I get my silicone in there, this is going to be a viable solution, which is pretty exciting. Although, you know, the LED per window isn't such a bad idea either, because that would take me back to my original idea, which was to put an LED in every window. I forget why I opted to not do that. I think it was because between these three, it would be difficult to get the baffles in there or something to that effect. I don't remember. So, I mean, the option is still on the table. We'll see. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That would be 12 lights per. Part of the advantage of doing 8 per is that 8 by 8 works naturally with the shift register chaining that I'm going to do to complete the circuitry. So having 8 lights per section is really nice. And I think I prefer to go that route, which means to stick with the idea of single, double, 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 single, and then single, single. The wires also, I can see through the window there, and so that needed to be dealt with. And in some cases, this wire, I need to tuck it in underneath the connector here, underneath the guide, the mounting guide. So I had to get a file in there and just strip some of this. See, I'm still not certain I want to take too much of this bulkhead off, because I think that, I was just talking about weight earlier, I think this would help with the weight. I mean, it's a nice sturdy piece of plastic. So anyway, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I am considering, though, drilling holes in the back through here, and then shining the light from the back in through here. That is an option that is open to me. I did test out with my Dremel. The Dremel can't quite get an angle on this properly because my Dremel is it's a corded. It's a pretty bulky thing, even though it is small. It's still too bulky to get in here and get a nice flush cut straight through that back. Because I wouldn't want to drill it at a downward angle, I don't think. Although, I mean, I could get a smaller hole and then just file it out. Yeah, maybe that's something I could do. But then mount the LED, affix it to the back so that it shines through here. And then just silicone the back, the hole up once the LED's in there, and have the wires out. That fixes my issue where I don't have to bend these wires to get the light down into that channel this way, because it puts a lot of strain on the solder connection. And I've had one of them break on me already. But I mean, I did a lot of testing with it, so I mean, once they're mounted and everything's glued down, and those wires aren't going to move. But I am liking that idea of lighting through the back like that. I'm also considering going down to the hobby store here pretty quick and getting some cylinders, because I think cylinders would help in mounting a lot of the lights that I need to put on here. And it's coming up very soon. I'm going to go over the saucer section with you and just decide, let you know some of the decisions that I've made and some of the work that I've done in preparing to light up the other portions here as well. I am going to move the camera though, because it's getting annoying that it's this close. Okay, this will be easier to kind of go through a walkthrough around the entire saucer. So coming up, what's my next step here? Once I'm happy with the solution that I've had for each of these sections here, the next I want to take a look at is doing some testing and make some final decisions on how I'm going to mount my orange lights in here for the saucer sections. The red and green are going to be pretty easy. I've already decided on those. I just have to carve out and actually do the testing. I know how I want to do my bulbs though. After that, I've been looking at this part here, which should be fun. I was originally proceeding from the assumption that I was going to need to compartment this whole section off and maybe use a single LED to light up both this back portion here and the top. That's not the way to do it though. So I'm going to show you what I came up with to do at least part of that. I'm spilling resistors everywhere. All right. So here's the little cup. That's going to end up the light cup. And I've fashioned another cup of my own that I'm going to use to mount with that with. And what else did I do? This is the piece. Let's see if this is the one that wraps around it. So in lighting this, I decided, you know, why don't I just try to isolate this thing off? This, by the way, for anybody who's not familiar, this is the clear portion that sits through this back here, and this is part of the engine system, and it's supposed to, I don't think this goes orange, but it certainly goes blue or off, depending on how the engines are engaged. The part on the front goes orange and blue, but I don't think this one goes orange. I'll have to refer to that again. Either way, I did buy RGBs for this, and the back here, there's another glass piece that mounts on here, clear piece, sorry. It mounts right there. And it gets mostly painted, but it's got a couple of see-through portions at the back, and there are lights that stick out the back. And I think some cylinder tubes in there would help. Light block those off. There's another reason I need to go down to the hardware store, or to the hobby store, and get some tubes, cylinders. So what I did is I cut up, let me grab this thing. I had this little paint mixer tray, and I really liked that inside spherical surface, that, what is that, a concave surface? And I thought that'd be great if I cut one of those out, took off what I need, drilled a hole through the center of it, that's where my light would go through, and then this would sit in here to contain it, like so. And I got a nice little light blocking solution to sit inside here. I also thought, I cut a piece for this and I don't know what I did with it, that when this sits inside, so this is the clear piece, when it's inside there, it'd be nice to surround that with a piece of polystyrene, glue that in, have that light blocked, and then this cup would sit on top of that. It's a nice tidy little light blocking solution there. And then from that, a couple of tubes just shooting through here with lights plugged into them. If I could find like a tube with a 3 millimeter inside diameter, that'd be perfect, because then the LED would just stuff right into the end of it. That would be awesome. But then just point those tubes directly down out here. And I can control the size of the tubes to control how the light splays out from here. I might be able to cut notchings out of the back end of the tube just to give the light a bit of an effect as it comes out that back. So I do need to go get some cylinder tubes. Oh, and the other reason, I think this is why I brought it up in the first place, was I thought if I could get tubes that'll do it, and I did drill holes through here to mount my lights through, an easy way to control the light and the amount that comes through, because they are pretty bright in here. A, I could increase the resistance, but I've already bought a lot of resistors. B is to put the light on the end of a tube, a small little length of cylinder, and mount the tube to the hole that I cut out of here. And that's one way of, but that's extra weight, so I probably shouldn't go that route if I don't have to. I'll just do some further tests on that and decide how I want to proceed. Then after that, okay, so I'm not going to fix any of this down until I'm happy with all of it. And then I'll retest again as I mount each one. After that, I'm going to start thinking about playing with the interior, the officer's lounge, I think it's called, inside here. And this is going to be a bit of a challenge, because it's just light gaps everywhere. Like, I mean, one way to go about that is just to putty the heck out of it once I'm happy with the lighting for it. That's one option. Maybe that's the easiest option. Like, maybe I could take some styrene and at least create a rudimentary housing, and then try to light block it from there. Maybe a flat piece could mount to the back here, and then just putty the rest. But first I have to paint it, put the light in there, decide how I want to light it. I'm still wanting to do the light effect behind those screens. But this is where tubes come in. I think tubes is the right solution for here. Or maybe not tubes. I don't know if they have square cylinders. What are those called? What would you call a square cylinder? But use those inside here. Or sorry, to create a light block compartment for these here. I'll have to go down to the hobby store and see what they have. I mean, I could make little compartments, but it'd be easier if I could just buy them. Another thing I wanted to have a look at is the window piece for the back of the officer's lounge, this photo etch part. So I've seen other people working with this who, let me just turn this around here, who have put this part on and they've realized they needed to cut a portion out of the back of the saucer section. That it is true. There's no way this is going on unless you either trim this, which didn't seem like a very good option, or unless you trim this part out here. And I wanted to try something a little bit different. What I've done is I've actually carved out, making my pointer, you can probably see it from there. I've carved out just enough for that brass piece to sit inside there. That's an inside edge that I've just penciled off. It was kind of fun to do it that way. I figured, worst case scenario, if it doesn't work, I just need to rip all this out anyway. But I wanted to see if I could carve it, if I could use a little knife skill. So all I did was place this down over top, penciled off where the edges were, and then I took my knife and I very carefully started cutting along that pencil line. Tried to keep it as straight as possible, and I just kept going until I got a little bit deeper. And then just like wood carving, I just slowly started chipping and shaving out that inside piece. It's not perfect, it doesn't have to be, it's pretty rough, but once I glue this in here and do some putty work over it, one of the things I did notice for anybody who's going to be working with this part here is this, obviously these are very fragile, these brass pieces, I think it's brass, and this needs to bend, it needs to curve, just slightly, not much, like I've curved it a little bit and that's not enough. I'll have to curve it more than that, but you start seeing where the metal is reacting to the curving, and sometimes it reacts in a way that you don't necessarily want it to. So I find just slowly and exerting pressure, and try to do it evenly and move your thumbs around. So it's just doing it very, very slowly and gradually. And be patient, and you'll get a curve out of it. I imagine there are tools that you can get to help you bend them. I know there are tools that help you bend them. I don't know if you can get tools that help you curve them. I haven't seen any. But probably even just find a curve that you like on a cup or something, and then just slowly flex this down over the top of it. And that might help as well. A mason jar or something. Go find something in your fridge, I'm sure it'll work. Anyway, so to mount this now, I have to get in here. This works, and I like it. To mount it up here, I have to push the top in first, because there is that lip along this edge, and then I can go down with the bottom and tuck in those corners. I have to be careful when I'm doing it. I can almost get it to where it sits in there without glue. Not quite, but just about. Oh, it came out that time. I've been able to get it in there so it just sits. The corners are nicely tucked in there. There's not too much of a gap that I'll need to seal up. You know what I've done? This stuff bends so easy. to be really careful to the way you apply force to these parts. And I've been tempted to break out my pliers to try to gently bend certain areas back again, but that's not a good idea because you could get grooves from the pliers. You can score the brass pretty easily. I believe brass is a pretty soft metal, isn't it? These tweezers don't have grooves, so they might be safe. Yeah, that's hard. Because you apply pressure, but you don't know, you can't always predict where that pressure is going to give. And sometimes it's not where you want it to give. You can be really careful. So right now my instinct is to press down with my thumbnails to tuck in those bottom corners. But that brass can really react badly to that. It is brass, I hope. You know, I keep saying brass. Ah, see, it came out. Anyway, once I put some CA glue in there and mount that down, it'll work well, I think. I had it in there so it doesn't come out. Anyway, that doesn't matter. So yeah, the part I haven't figured out yet is how the glass, the actual original clear part, is now going to fit in there, you know, or will it? Because this is meant to go into this little hole, and then I think it has detail on the clear part that you're supposed to paint, and that mimics these lines. But if that's true, if it's a raised detail, is it going to butt up against those now on the clear part? I'm not clear how that's going to look. So I'll have to get out that clear part and push it in there and see what it looks like. And one last thing that I wanted to mention here is in the top of the saucer section, which is the A and B deck, because I had a heck of a time blocking off this back section. I used the clear part in here. I didn't paint it before I glued it in, and then I just painted the back of it. And I had a heck of a time light blocking these seams along in the inside here. No matter what I did, it seemed. And I put a bunch of layers of paint all along the inside edges in there, and I just didn't want to, and this is enamel paint, and then there's 3-4 layers in there now. But light was still shining through those gaps. And what I had to do, and I guess this is where they came up with the term pinning, because I literally took a pin, it's around here somewhere, and just dabbed it in paint and slowly pushed drops on the inside, and then I wiped it all off, and I'll give it a little sanding once that's dried and once I'm ready to do another coat on this. So now I have it so that the light is mostly just coming out from where I want it to. Looks like there's still a little bit of a leak on the bottom edge here. And so I've been thinking about why is that happening? Why is that? If I've got the entire back portion painted off except for the 2 little holes here, how is the light getting through? And I think what's happening is, if you have this kit and you haven't worked with it yet, on the back of this, there are 2 little nubs that were, I guess, part of the original plan for this, and they're supposed to represent the windows. And when you put the pieces on, sorry, from the photo etch part, the holes don't exactly line up the windows. So that little nub thing, I think that's a part of the plastic. It's catching light, and it's just rebounding light all over the inside of the glass on the inside there. And it has nowhere else to escape except for those seams and the windows themselves. I mean, that's the only answer I have. I've put so much paint on this inside seam. You can see it's still wet, it's coming off. Like I was just getting frustrated with it because I couldn't block that light. And anyway, the only answer that I can think of is it's these 2 little nubs. And I wish I would, I mean, next time if I ever do this again, I would chip those off or shave them off or sand them off or something, because I think they're catching light. And now the entire glass part is lighting up. So it'll find whatever escape it can. So yeah, it's just a little heads up if anybody else plans to light that up. Anyway, so I blocked off the hole inside there. I'm ready to start testing with a piece of fiber optic up in through there pretty quick. And that's another use for the cylinder tubes. If I can get a 3mm inside diameter and get an LED up inside the tube, then I can just stuff the open ends of of lengths of 1mm fiber optic cable, which is what I have, and use those for my strobes and just run the fiber optic to all the places I need the strobes. So all of my strobes will be running off of a single LED mounted into a tube, which I could then seal off with all the other strands of fiber optic on the inside. I think that would work really well. And then the tube itself, the light, would probably originate from the hull. I think that's where I'll put them. Yeah, is that everything? I think that's everything. So I mean, I've got a few things to do still, obviously, before I'm done with actually mounting anything to this saucer section. But you know, just keep plugging away at it, and it'll start to take shape. I'm going to be really happy when I'm ready to start mounting these vertical pieces on. And that does raise the question I'm already asking myself, the order of process. Like, do I want to prime these vertical pieces first before I glue them in? I would need to prime the actual saucer section as well. Do I want to put the base coat on? I don't think I want to do either of those because I still have to. I'm still going to need to fill in gaps and seams probably and correct these vertical sections. So what's the use of painting and putting the base color down, you know, when I still have putty work and sanding to do? So I think gluing it first is the way to go. You know, I could dust it just to try to get some paint inside these windows and stuff. So I'll probably dust it with primer and maybe even get some of the Model Air Insignia white and use the airbrush to dust the inside of the window. Just very, very light coat so it's not black. The question also remains if I'm going to need to do any light blocking to the actual glass pieces because, like I just mentioned, the problem with the big glass piece that I put on here, I have the same thing with the windows that mount into here. They've got big plastic bases, and if those are catching light, are they going to shine them weird? So do I need to apply any paint now before I put those in? Yeah, I think, yeah. So I'll glue these down first. And then it'll be a matter of masking the windows before I do the priming and the painting. So that's going to be interesting as well. And I'm wondering if white glue is the answer for that. You know, I've been watching other people's videos and they do say white glue is an option if you're trying to mask off parts, clear parts or details. So I have some white glue. There is also a specific liquid mask that you can buy. I don't know. So I'll have to do some experiments there and see what I like best. I mean, I'll experiment with the actual piece because I can always take the paint off again afterwards. It's not hard to do. Yeah. Lots of testing, lots of experiments. It's more of a science project than a modeling project, I think. Anyway, well, I'll leave that there for now. I'm excited though. I am excited to see at least one of these sections lit up. That's going to be a big milestone for me. I'll try to make that the end of my next video, maybe. That'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for watching. There are a few people who seem to be interested, and I do appreciate that. It's, you know, I wasn't sure what kind of interest I would get. I just wanted to do it anyway. Had time to kill, I guess. But I do appreciate it. I will get through this project, but it's not going to be a hurry up and get it done kind of thing. So, yeah, anyway, take care. Have a good day.